Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us for today's Fence Bylaw public engagement session. Just a note that we're waiting for a few more people to join us, so we'll be starting things about 2 or 3 minutes late at around 6:03. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, folks. Thanks again for joining us for tonight's public engagement session. We seem to be waiting for a few more attendees to join us, and given that the presentation is fairly brief for this session, I think we'll wait until we have a few more folks in attendance before kicking things off. It shouldn't be much longer, though. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for tonight's public engagement session. My name is Mark Nardi. I'm a communications officer with the City of Kingston, and I will be moderating. So again, welcome to the Fence Bylaw Review. Just a few notes before we begin. As you joined the meeting, you will have heard a voice reminder indicating that the session was being recorded and live streamed. This will be live streamed on the city's YouTube page. And after the session, you can go back and view it if you like. For your privacy, video microphones and chat features have also been disabled. We will go through options for how you can ask questions and share comments at a later point. So first thing, we do recognize that technology troubles happen, and sometimes the best thing to do is just adjust your view options. So you can go into the bottom bar of your Zoom panel and make sure that you've adjusted things so that you can see all panelists and attendees. Having said that, we also have a list of resources at the city's Get Involved page for online engagements. If you're encountering trouble with your video or forced to leave the call, you can call in using your phone at the number that's bolded on the screen here. Please take note of the webinar ID you will be required to put that in to join the session. You can also follow us along on YouTube if you continue to encounter technological problems. If these don't seem to resolve any of your issues, sometimes the best way to sort things out is just to leave the session. You can go ahead and leave the meeting and rejoin using the same link that was emailed to you. If you continue to have technical problems, just go ahead and raise your hand. It's just in the bottom of your Zoom taskbar there. Raise your hand and I can send you a message and we can look into whatever you're encountering. For this session, we will have two different ways that you can ask questions. So first things first, you can ask questions in writing by typing in the Q&A area, and you can find that in the bottom bar. Click the Q&A button and just type in your answers. Staff will then go ahead and address answers as they come in. You can also ask a question verbally during the Q&A by clicking the raise hand button. A notification will appear by your name. I will then go ahead and invite you to mute yourself and share your question or comment, after which you will again be muted. So to make sure that we're able to share everyone's comments, we do ask that it is just one raised hand for one question or comment, and then we'll ask you to raise your hand again for any subsequent follow-ups to that. Now, if we don't answer every single question that was submitted as part of this, we will include it as part of the reporting for this engagement. On the screen here are the guidelines for participation. These are part of our public engagement framework, and they govern how we conduct online sessions. At this point in time, I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions, concerns, or requested additions to the guidelines for participation. If you do, go ahead and raise your hand. And seeing that no one has raised their hand at this point in time, we will acknowledge that these are the guidelines for the session, and we can proceed. Here's the agenda for tonight's public engagement. So we are about 5 minutes late to kick things off. We will have a brief presentation from staff, which will take us through the proposed updates to the fence bylaw. This will run for probably a generous 30 minutes until we enter a questioning comments period. And we will try and address everyone's questions or comments, and then we will aim to conclude things by 7 p.m., at which point we have a hard stop. And with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to city staff to run through the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Lisa Kapner-Hunt, and I'm the Director of Building and Enforcement. And I have with me tonight Tammy Hogg, who's a Supervisor of Building Services. Next slide, Mark, please. So the intent of the session tonight is to inform you on the amendments that we're proposing to the city's fence bylaw. Most of the changes are housekeeping in nature. And these were initially identified as inconsistencies between meters and feet in the various sections of the bylaw. So in reviewing the provisions, we noticed standards referenced within the bylaw were incorrect and inconsistent, and some references to the zoning bylaw where there was no regulations in the zoning bylaw to support the reference, as well as we took the opportunity to introduce new fence trends for horizontal fencing, as opposed to the vertical fencing that required specific approval. So these were not previously permitted within the fence bylaw, so we're proposing to introduce them. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the changes that we're proposing within the bylaw. These are very brief, and as I said earlier, most of these are housekeeping amendments. So we've revised the definition for above ground pool fence by taking out the reference to the ANSI standard. And we've also revised the definition for the height of a fence. We received many concerns on the heights of fences and how these should be measured. So we do have a definition within the fence bylaw that references the finished grade and the exterior face, but nothing that says how to measure the fence. So we've added the provisions to measure the exterior from the exterior face using the average height between the support posts where the fence is constructed on a sloping finished grade. Next slide, please. For permanent pool fences, we've revised to add provisions for horizontal board fence. So originally the bylaw only included provisions for vertical fencing. And we're seeing a trend within the community where people are requesting horizontal fencing. So we wanted to make sure that these would be permitted with these fence amendments. And the one provision that we're adding in here is that we would require a 2-foot support post fastened to the top and bottom rails. For the horizontal fencing, that's not required for the vertical fencing. The reason for this is because the wood fencing would split and warp. So that's to maintain the straightness of those boards so that they're not climbable. Next slide, please. We've also added some housekeeping amendments for the top and bottom rail to reflect some consistencies in sizing. So throughout the bylaw, we have 1.5 and 38 millimeters. So this one sentence was a little bit different at 50 and 2. So we revised that just for consistency. Under 4.7 of the bylaw, there was a reference to the zoning bylaw for the requirements for the setbacks. The zoning bylaw does not have any provisions for setbacks for fencing. So we're removing this provision from the fence bylaw for consistency with other fence sections, as well as changing some housekeeping amendments to coordinate the feet and meters throughout the bylaw. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the changes that we were proposing within the bylaw are very, they're very short with a few slides that we've provided here. So our next steps are just to receive any input that you have or any questions you have on the changes that we're proposing for the bylaw. And then we'll be preparing a report for committee and council consideration. If you have any questions outside of this session tonight, you can email myself or Tammy Hogg directly at the emails listed on the screen. Does anyone have any questions or comments for us on the changes?
At this point in time, it doesn't look like we have any questions or comments. What we can do is give it another minute or so. And if we don't see any additional comments, we can actually bring things to a close a little bit earlier tonight. If you do have a question or comment at any point that comes up after this session, again, you can feel free to email building staff at the emails that were indicated on the back screen, and they can go ahead and follow up with you. And it can also be logged as part of the public engagement. So we'll go ahead and give it another minute here.
Sorry, there is a question in the chat here. I encourage latitude on increased height. Just wondering if the person who posed the question would like to provide a little more information on what they're looking for.
So seeing your question in the chat, I've gone ahead and unmuted yourself, so you can go ahead if you do want to share any more information on that.
Okay, so the question, the height is limited, correct? Yes, the height is limited on fences depending on the situation. So there is 6 foot with a 1 foot lattice, so 7 foot, and there is 8 foot and 9 foot provisions depending on the type of use. Did that answer your question? So you're looking for an increase in height limitations to be reviewed? You're looking for the heights to be higher than what they are permitted currently for different types of uses? Thank you.
Right, seeing that we don't have any questions at this point in time, and just a reminder that if you do have any questions or comments that you'd like to share with staff, you can please email them to the contacts at the bottom of the screen here by November 5th. Otherwise, I'll move things along here. So I'd like to thank you all for joining today's public engagement session. I know a few people already hopped off the call here, but we do have a quick evaluation poll. If you'd like, you can revisit the session by visiting the city's YouTube page and checking it there. You can also sign up for project updates through Involve Kingston or by emailing building staff, and we will be able to get back to you there. So we do see a question in the chat here from Robert. I was told by Kingston Bylaw officer that the height was omitted. Process to hold that officer accountable for providing false information. Lisa, would you be able to provide a little more information on contacts for that?
Yeah, I would just note if you've received some incorrect information, we can provide you a correction for that if you just want to reach out to me directly outside of this meeting.
All right, good. And for everyone who's still in attendance, we just have a quick poll on the screen here. This is just our public engagement process, the frameworks, just general feedback on how the session went today. It was a fairly quick session, but if you could help us out by completing that, that would be much appreciated. And once you've done so, feel free to go ahead and sign out of the webinar. Thanks very much for taking the time to attend this session tonight, and have a great evening.